What is up, people, and welcome. I'm back with another PlayStation All-Stars 2 video, but of course this is my character's wish list. And I will say I am a big fan of PlayStation. I have played a lot of their games and know of a lot of their games. So with that being said, the list has 70 characters. Now I know that's a lot, but if you look back, some of the games have close to 70 characters. Not that they have 70 characters, but it's close to it, or it's a high number. And I do think we should have more characters in our games, especially in our fighting games. We should have more fighting game characters, like more characters to play from, instead of like 20 and 30 being the max most of the time. But for example, we had Super Smash Bros. 4, which had 58. Of course, that was plus that was including the DLC. And then we had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that had 56. And then we had Tekken Tag 2 that had 59. And of course, the most being Mortal Kombat Armageddon, which has 62. So 70 characters don't sound so far-fetched. And of course, another reason why I say they should put 70 characters, because there are a lot of characters that people will like to see, because people are going to want to see characters from all of the PlayStation platforms. Of course, PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4. And of course, they have PSP and PS Vita. So with all of those, you're going to need a big roster. Definitely if it's a crossover fighting game. You should give the respect to people who made games for PlayStation, even if they're not the best game ever. Because there may be a character that has a very bad game, or like a mediocre game, but the character themselves is a very good character. And people actually enjoy playing him in a fighting game, and of course maybe his game was known, but it just wasn't a good game. So before I start this list, the characters are in pairs, so it's like rivalry / team ups, because I do think the characters probably still should fight, but I do think they should team up after they fight to go fight the main boss or whatever. I can make a video talking about probably things that they should do for PlayStation All-Stars 2. It depends. I may do it. And I do think some characters should be removed. So there are characters I'm going to talk about first that I think should be removed or replaced. And the last thing I want to mention is that this list isn't in any particular order. I just made the list. I was going to put it in an order, but it was just too many characters, and I like so many of the characters, and I want some to be in it just as much as others. So it was just too hard to really put it in any order. So I just made it and just made a list up. So don't think that somebody may be really high on the list, or he should be better, or he should be lower, or what am I thinking? So it's just a list. With that being said, let's start with the characters I want to be removed. Isaac Clarke. Though I don't hate this character or have nothing against him, but I still do think he should be removed, because I don't know, he seemed a little bit unnecessary to be in the game, and they could have put other people that were way better than him. Even when it came to third-party characters, they could have put characters that were better than him. And of course, PlayStation All-Stars had a lot of characters with guns, and in my opinion, they didn't really need any more, unless they were actually from the Sony brand, or Sony owned characters. Then I would have had to really said anything. But of course, Isaac isn't. And yeah, I just think he should be removed this time around. So next is Fat Princess. I do think Fat Princess should either be removed or revamped, but I do think Fat Princess would be better represented as a stage more than a character. Like I said, if they put her as a character, they probably should revamp her, because of course everyone knows that Fat Princess was gunned on a lot. When PlayStation All-Stars first released, people called her Fat Peach or Honey Boo Boo, all those kind of names. Even my friends who didn't know who Fat Princess was asking me, why is Honey Boo Boo in the game? Even with all that aside, I do think they should have put characters probably are a little bit more known, or would be more fun to play as, because like I said, the characters don't really have to be known. But like a character that people would probably like to play as, Fat Princess, I don't really know if anybody would ever have necessarily said, I would love to play Fat Princess in a fighting game. The next character I want to be removed is Big Daddy. Even though I know the creators of BioShock asked, can they put Big Daddy in the game? And of course, to me that's cool. But I think this time around, Big Daddy should be removed, because even when they put a BioShock character, I think it would have been better if they put Elizabeth or maybe Booker DeWitt, because they stand out a little bit more as characters. But Big Daddy, like I said, he wasn't bad. Even his fighting style wasn't bad in PlayStation All-Stars. He put in work. It wasn't like, oh, I got Big Daddy with me, we're about to get trash. You never felt like that. He just felt very strange in this game. Something about him, maybe because he seems more like an Xbox character. With that being said, the next character is Evil Cole. I don't think I have to say much about this. It doesn't make sense to put the same character in the fighting game just because he's evil. His specials were a little bit different, and his fighting style was a tad bit different, but I don't think they should do the clones. I know Super Smash Bros. Did it, that was dumb. When PlayStation All-Stars did it, I was like, this doesn't really make too much sense. So yeah, Evil Cole should definitely be removed. So the last character is Heihachi Mishima. He shouldn't necessarily just be removed, because of course, if he's not in the game anymore, he is being removed. but he should be more replaced with another Tekken character. And of course, I will talk about that Tekken character when I actually get to my list. That is all the characters I do think should be removed. So with that being said, let's start the actual list. Number 35, Zeus and Cole McGrath. Even though I know some people would say that Zeus shouldn't make a return, but I do think he should make a return because I do think he would be a very good rival for Cole McGrath because of course they both do lightning. And other than that, it would be a little hard to find a rival for Cole unless maybe they get the guy from Prototype, but I do think Zeus is better fitting. I think it'll make for a more interesting rivalry because if Zeus seen Cole McGrath controlling lightning, of course he'd probably wonder what he got the power from in the first place, and he'd probably feel a little threatening because he's immortal and can control lightning just as good as he can, and some may even argue better. Number 34, Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter. There's not much to be said about this. They were rivals in the first game, and they should remain rivals. Number 33, Kratos and Noriko. This was strange to me because Kratos and Noriko was in the first game, and they weren't rivals. And most people who know about Heavenly Sword, or probably who played it, kind of consider Noriko as a female version of Kratos. Even though I have the picture of young Kratos, I do think they should use the older Kratos. This will take away some of the similarities the two characters have, but I think it will help balance the character out because people did, cry a lot about how unbalanced Kratos was. But to be honest, in my opinion, I don't really think you can necessarily balance him out. I guess you would say really good, especially if you want him to fight the way he does in his game. Because the main gripe that people had with Kratos was that his range was ridiculous and he was extremely fast and he had a bunch of weapons. But if they try to take it all away from him, generally he wouldn't even be Kratos. Like, some games tried it, like Mortal Kombat. Like, they made him so nerfed that they make him swing his blades while he's holding them in his hands. He doesn't really use the chains too much. It starts making weird things like that happen, and then it kind of doesn't even feel like that you're playing that character. So I think with that, they should put old Kratos to just eliminate all those problems. Number 32, Sackboy and Kutaro. From first glance, their games look very similar. Sackboy, he's kind of looked at his character that has the power to create, and Kutaro, his kind of the opposite. He more of, I guess you could say, destroys because he has the scissors that can cut through anything, and that's what his game's kind of about. So like for their scene, Sackboy could be sitting there creating something, and then it's in Kutaro's way, so he cuts it up with the scissors. Sackboy kind of gets angry, and of course both of their games have narrators, so the narrators start bumping heads talking about whose story it is, and then it can escalate from there. Number 31, Lara Croft and Nathan Drake. There's nothing I really have to say about this. People say Nathan Drake is a male version of Lara Croft, but I will say that I do think if they put Lara Croft in PlayStation All-Stars, they should use the original Lara Croft, not the one from Rise of the Tomb Raider or the other ones that came before that. Because, she would probably play kind of similar to Nathan Drake, but with a bow. And, some things would be a little bit different. But I would say the original Lara Croft stands out more as a character, and she's more iconic than the newer ones. So I would hope that they put the original Lara Croft over the newer one. Number 30, Parappa the Rapper and Granbert. Okay, this was kind of hard because Parappa the Rapper, he's a kind of unique character. He's really very unique. So it's kind of hard to find characters that match up with other characters that are extremely unique. He's not a platformer character, so it's kind of hard. But so I got Granbert to be his rival. I think Granbert would be a perfect rival because they both come from like a paper type world. It's not made out of paper, but it looks like paper. Both of their worlds are flat, and they both come from, of course, rhythm games. So I do think this will be the best rival for Parappa the Rapper. And Granbert, even though Granbert, he's more of a fighter, though Parappa the Rapper knows how to fight because, he learned from Chop Chop Master Onion. But Granbert, he's more of a warrior. Number 29, Reddick and the Chimera. Reddick was one of my favorite characters in PlayStation All-Stars, and he was, of course, in the original game. While they didn't have any characters from Resistance, so I do think the Chimera would make a good rival for Reddick, because they're both, at the end of the day, trying to do the same thing in their game. The Chimera, they're aliens that come from space, that are trying to take over the world. And Reddick, he's an alien that came from space, and they're generally trying to take over the world or destroy it. The main differences between these two characters is that the Helghan, they're more civilized, while a Chimera, he's more like a zombie that's on steroids with a gun. Because a Chimera, he'll jump on you, try to rip you apart, or try to eat your face or something like that. A Helghan's not going to go that far. So yeah, I do think they'll be good rivals. Number 28, Abe and Sir Daniel Fortescue. We all know that Abe was supposed to be a DLC character. He was supposed to rival Dart, but he was canceled, and of course we all should know that Dart would not be the best rival for Abe. In my opinion, Sir Daniel will be the best rival for Abe. Both characters are kind of goofy, and they're both kind of clumsy, and they kind of have like a mouth problem. Abe is sewn up, and Sir Daniel just doesn't have a jaw. But the only difference between Abe, he can actually speak and make out words, while Sir Daniel cannot. He mumbles everything. But even with that, So Daniel, if he came across Abe, I'm pretty sure that he can mistake him for undead, because Abe looks like a undead, especially from his game, even though he has, weird amount of toes and fingers and stuff, but he still does look like an undead or some kind of creature. Number 27, Wanderer and Cat. I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, Wanderer and Cat, wait, what are you talking about? Why would you put these two characters together? Yeah, I know they are pretty. I know these characters are so different, but they do have similarities, so hear me out. Both of these characters speak a weird foreign language that really none of us can really relate to. And both their characters have an animal companion that assists them in battle. Wanderers being aggro, and of course, Cats being dust. And in order for both of them to defeat their opponents, they have to target the weak points. Wanderer has to target the Colossus' weak spots, and Cat has to target the Nevite's weak points in order to kill it. Number 26, Sly Cooper and Gex. These two characters kind of have similar personalities, but Sly, he's more smooth, and Gex, he's kind of crass, like the guy slapped him in his face and he passes gas in the guy's face. Sly's not going to do something like that. Sly's more slick. So yeah, I do think they'll make great rivals, and it'll be funny to see them throw humorous jokes at each other. Number 25, Emmett Graves and Nathan Hap. Both these character similarities, of course, they both have the thing that they're fighting inside of them, and they have the power of the thing that they're fighting. Emmett Graves have the power of the drifters. As you can see, that's why his eyes are glowing and he has one of his hands look kind of crazy. And Nathan Hap has the power of the Chimera. Number 24, Spike and Tomba. This one was kind of hard too, because what Spike does, it is kind of hard to pair a character with him. But I chose Tomba because he does act like a monkey, and if Spike's seen him, he probably would think Spectre affected him or something because of a human acting like a monkey. And if Spike tries to ask Tomba questions, because Tomba can understand people, it's not like he doesn't understand people. He can understand, but from what I remember, he doesn't talk. So he will understand what Spike is saying, but he wouldn't know what he's talking about, and that probably would make Tomba start getting frustrated, and things probably would escalate from there. Number 23, Sweet Tooth and Gillette. Now, one of the main problems that people said was wrong with PlayStation All-Stars was that it lacked female characters, so I do think Gillette will be a good addition to PlayStation All-Stars because she was a new character, I guess, in last generation. And I think she'll be a good rival for Sweet Tooth because they both like sweets. Sweet Tooth being ice cream and Gillette likes lollipop. And they both use chainsaws. Of course, Sweet Tooth's main weapon is machete, but he does use a chainsaw often. And their rivalry could kind of be about which one is better, ice cream or lollipops. Me personally, I'll have to agree with my boy Sweet Tooth. Number 22, Raiden and Strider Hiryu. In my opinion, Raiden definitely has to make a comeback because he was one of the most popular characters in PlayStation All-Stars. I would say Raiden was at least the top 5 characters that were played in PlayStation All-Stars. He has to be around that. Raiden is too much of a popular character to just up and remove if they're still trying to get some of the old audience along with some new ones if they make a sequel. But with that, their similarities is that they both use cybernetics and they're both ninjas. I think I'm one of the few people that actually like Raiden more than Snake, but with that being said, this will be one of the most epic rivalries in PlayStation All-Stars. Number 21, Alucard and Dante. Generally, this is just Vampire vs. Demon, but the only thing I really want to say aside from that is I hope that they use Alucard's original design. Of course, that the picture I'm using, which is Castlevania, the original one, Symphony of the Night, and the original Dante, not the new Dante. If they're going to use the new Dante, they might as well not use them at all. But with that, I think Alucard and Dante will make pretty cool rivals. Number 20, Blasto and Duke Nukem. Both of these characters are actually very similar. They both girl crazy, they both are very sarcastic, and they both fight aliens. The only difference is Blasto, he's more galactic, and of course he's more cartoony, while Duke Nukem, he's more serious tone, I guess you could say. But come on, both characters have blonde hair, always keep their eyes covered, and rocks a red shirt. Number 19, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. There's not much to be said about this that hasn't been said already, so let's just move on. Number 18, Rudy vs. Jester. Rudy comes from the game Wild Arm that was released on PlayStation 1, and Jester comes from Rogue Galaxy that was released on PS2. These two characters aren't really similar except that they come from RPGs, but I didn't really know who to pair them up with, so I just said, hey, why not Cowboy versus Pirate? Number 17, Musashi and Yoshitsune. I actually wanted to get somebody else to be Yoshi's rival like Seminosuke, but Seminosuke, of course, he'll be next to impossible to really get because you don't even see him in games like Marvel vs. Capcom. And I also thought about Hyakimaru from Blood Will Tell, which to me he would have been very awesome in PlayStation All-Stars. But to be honest, Musashi would be a better fit because Yoshitsune, if you don't know, he is based off a historical figure and so is Musashi. And they were in the same time period, so I believe he'll be the better choice. Number 16, Jin Kazuma and Ryu, even though I know some people are going to say, whoa, Ryu's in Super Smash Bros, but he can be in two fighting games at the same time. But if you haven't guessed it already, Jin is the replacement for Mishima because I do think he's a better character and he's a more powerful character because at least if he uses level 3, he can turn to Devil Jin, while Mishima, he just shot everybody up outer space or whatever in a rocket ship. And if they get Ryu in the game, they can also make Jin be his rival because he would be the best rival for Ryu. And we can finally get that Devil Jin versus Evil Ryu battle. Number 15, Clementine and Ellie. I know I had to put a character from The Last of Us. I was going to originally put Joel, but I said, you know what, let me put Ellie because I know she is going to be the protagonist this time around. Well, they most may still be in the game, but it's probably going to be more focused on her this time. And the same thing happened with Clementine. She became the main protagonist of the Walking Dead series. And of course, the obvious thing is they both are in an apocalyptic world. And they're kind of young, and I guess they're both females. There's that. Number 14, Ryo Hazuki and Kazuma Kiryu. Both of these characters come from semi-open world beat-em-up games, but the difference between these two characters is that Kazuma, he's a bit older and he is a part of a gang, so that does make it a little bit different. And of course, that probably can actually give them a good rivalry because Ryo's not in the gang. He fights gang members, but he's not in the gang himself. Kazuma, which he is in a gang and he fights other gang members, but he doesn't really fight innocent people, so that would be pretty interesting. Number 13, Snake and Gabe Logan. I know some people are going to say which Snake exactly. Of course, I have the picture of Big Boss Snake, but I just said it doesn't really matter in my opinion because if it's PlayStation All-Stars, of course, you could always get costumes for other Snakes or whatever. And I know some people are going to say, why didn't I choose Sam Fisher over Gabe Logan? And honestly, Gabe has the same similarities that Sam Fisher would with Snakes. And Snake does reference Gabe Logan in one of his games. And of course, Gabe Logan is actually owned by Sony, so it would be easier for them to get him instead of Sam Fisher. If you can kind of stay in your community, I guess you can say, they can stay within their IP range is best instead of trying to always go out and get other characters. So I think that would definitely be better for them to get Gabe Logan over Sam Fisher. Number 12, Cosmos and Neptune. Cosmos comes from the game Xenosaga that was released back on the PS2, and I always thought that Cosmos would have been added to the roster of PlayStation All-Stars because her game was exclusive for PlayStation. And the same with Neptune, she comes from the game Hyperdimension Neptunia or something like that, and her game is also exclusive for PlayStation, and I do think they need to put more Japanese characters to appeal to the Japanese audience, and also the fact that they did lack female characters, so I guess this would add more female characters to the roster. Number 11, Sinner and Aloy. Of course, we all know if they make a sequel to PlayStation All-Stars, Aloy more than likely going to be in it because her character did blow up very big and her game was very popular and it sold very well. As for the Sinner, for those who don't know, he comes from the game Freedom Wars and in my opinion is one of the best original games on the PlayStation Vita. Now the similarities that these two characters have is that their world has been overran by robots and they're kind of in a post-apocalyptic world. The Sinner's not that bad as it relates to post-apocalyptic. As you can see, the dude's rocking beats. If you're rocking beats in a post-apocalyptic world, you're doing pretty well. Number 10, Raul and Akuji. Raul comes from the game Mark of Cry. I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. Comment down below if I'm wrong. And Akuji comes from the game Akuji the Heartless. I honestly have to admit that Akuji would be a better rival for Kratos because Akuji as a character, he's more violent and brutal and his game kind of fits the mold of God of War. Like he's been cast to the underworld, he's trying to escape and stuff like that and save his wife. Raul and Akuji don't really have any similarities. They're just both kind of tribal. That's why I put them together. And the reason why I didn't make Kratos Akuji's rival is because Akuji does lack the popularity that Kratos has. Because Kratos is kind of looked at as the icon of PlayStation, and Akuji, he doesn't have any fan base barely at all nowadays. And for that reason, I think it's best that Raul is his rival. Number 9, Hunter and Wallace. The Hunter, of course, he comes from Bloodborne, and Wallace, he comes from Nightmare Creatures. These two characters are basically identical. They both come from the same time period, it's generally the same concept, and they both use the same kind of weapons. As you can see in the videos displayed side by side, and I know some people are probably going to wonder why didn't I do this with every character, and I actually was going to, but it took too much time so I couldn't do it, and it would have taken me too long to finish the video. So I said, you know what, let me just not do it. So I kind of scrapped it, but I said since I already made two, I might as well use it in the video. But yeah, with that being said, I do think Wallace has to be the rival for the Hunter. I can't really see anybody else being his rival. Number 8, James Sunderland and Leon S. Kennedy. Now these two characters are from the rival horror games Silent Hill and Resident Evil. The reason why I think James and Leon should be rival is because they both look the same, I'm not gonna lie, and they both were the protagonists of the second installment of their games. Now I know people are going to say why didn't I put the Executioner, because I know a lot of people will say that the Executioner should have been a PlayStation All-Stars, and I will say this, I don't think the Executioner should be necessarily a character, but I do think he should be with James. Now what I mean by that is if James gets level 3, I do think the Executioner should be his level 3. Maybe James goes to hiding, and Executioner comes out, you play the Executioner and get kills, and of course when it's over, he leaves and James comes back out. And the reason why I say that, because the execution, when you actually think about it, he's not really going to have a combo set like that. You're gonna have to make something up for him. He doesn't have that much weapons. James have more weapons and variety as a character, and even personality, of course, if you want to add that. Number 7, Joker and Ellen. I do think PlayStation also should have put a Persona character, and of course now the Joker would be the best choice because he comes from the new installment of Persona, and the game sold pretty well and it was well received. As for Ellen, she's the protagonist of Folklore that was released back on PlayStation 3, and me personally, I would say it was one of the best PlayStation exclusives for PS3. But these two characters are pretty similar, especially how they got their powers. They both, I think, went to a different dimension and end up getting their powers. The Joker can control Persona, and I think it's supposed to be like an extension of themselves or a shadow of themselves. Let's explain something like that. I don't want to make it too confusing. And if I'm wrong about that, just post a comment down below. And Ellen can control Folklore, which are based off of mythical creatures like elves, dwarves, and all that kind of stuff, and some other ones. So if he's seen her controlling Folklore, he would think it's a Persona, and vice versa. Number 6, Orochimaru and Altair. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be Altair. I'd really just put Assassin. I only put Altair because I had the picture of Altair. In my opinion, it would probably be best to put the newest guy because he will have more items and more equipment. So, he'd probably be the better character. Honestly, it doesn't matter what assassin they use because he can always put a costume for the newest or other assassin that people would want to be in the game. So it's always a win-win. I was hoping that Orochimaru was going to be in the first PlayStation All-Stars, but I kind of knew he wasn't after I started kind of seeing the characters we were revealing and how they were doing it. And Tenchu as a game had a big relationship with Sony because it was exclusive for a while. And of course it started going to other platforms like many of the games, Final Fantasy and all of those. So I think Tenchu kind of falls in the same category. So I think if they make PlayStation All-Stars 2, they need to put Orochimaru and put an assassin as his rival. Number 5, Jennifer Test and Raziel. Couldn't really find anybody to be Raziel's rival like that, so I thought Jennifer Test would be one of the best candidates. Raziel was a very highly requested character, even though he never made it to PlayStation All-Stars, so I do think if they make a sequel, he has to be one of the main characters that they put in the game. Not a DLC, he has to be one of the main characters. Jennifer Test was also requested, not as much as Raziel, because Raziel does have more of a fan base, but Jennifer Test was still requested enough. And I think even if she was put in and people who didn't ask for her, she still would be a decent character to play and they wouldn't be angry because of that. But with that being said, let's just move on to the next character. Number 4, Keith and Geoffrey Lembrum. Now Keith, he also comes from Folklore, and I know some people would say, wouldn't he be a clone character? He shouldn't be a clone character because first of all, Keith's Folklore are most of the time more stronger and they're slower. Ellen's are a little more faster, and he doesn't use his the same way Ellen uses hers, not at all. So he wouldn't be the same character, or he shouldn't end up being a clone character unless they get lazy. And Keith also has a transformation which Ellen doesn't have. The similarity is that Keith can absorb the soul of the Folklore, and he kind of summon them to battle to fight for him. Geoffrey Lembrum, he can sacrifice somebody and use their power after he sacrifices, and he gets like the memory and everything of the person. So if he's seen Keith absorb the soul of a Folklore, he can possibly mistake him for a sorcerer. Things can kind of escalate from there. Number 3, Alundra and Ian. Alundra comes from the game, Alundra, and Ian, he comes from the game Grandstream Saga. Both of these characters aren't necessarily similar, but they kind of come from like the same time period. And their games were pretty good, but to me they were kind of overlooked. Even though Alundra was popular enough to spawn the sequel, but it wasn't enough to keep going because the sequel wasn't as good as the first game. Now, like I said, I couldn't really find anybody to rival Ian. I actually did have a pretty good rival for Alundra, but I chose to give him a different rival instead, and the character is still on this list, so I will come to him next. So with that being said, let's move on to the next characters on this list. Number 2, Sora and Toan. Now Toan comes from Dark Cloud, and I do know Dark Cloud did have a sequel and it did have another protagonist, and it was actually a good sequel, but I still do think Toan's a better character and I do like him better, and honestly he's one of my favorite PlayStation characters, so I wanted to put him on the list instead of the other kid. I can't remember his name, it does escape me right now. And of course Toan was the character I originally planned to rival Alundra, but I think Sora will be a better rival for Toan and vice versa. Now there's similarities, both their worlds kind of got jacked up. Toan's, of course, his kind of got destroyed a little bit more than Sora's. I don't know exactly what happened to Sora's world, but it got covered in darkness or something like that. Kingdom Hearts is a little confusing, but Toan's world, it kind of got messed up actually. He was kind of piecing it together, like he was actually building it together. Toan kind of has the power to create. He's a little bit different from Sora, but I do still think both his characters are kind of the same. And they're both pretty young. Toan, he's a little bit older, even though he looks younger than Sora in my opinion. Toan is 17, so he's almost a man. Sora is like 16. I can't remember how old he is in Kingdom Hearts 3. I think he may be about 17, so he probably would be about the same age if they use that Sora. But with that, I would really love to see them rivals because they're both one of my favorite characters. Sora is one of my favorite characters from Square Enix, and Toan is also one of my favorite characters from Sony. And I think it would just be pretty epic. Number 1, Cloud and Dart. And before any life starts, I know people are going to say Cloud was in Super Smash, but really that does not matter. Cloud is more of a PlayStation character, and everyone knows that. And we all know that Dart was set to be DLC for the original PlayStation All-Stars, and to me that was a dumb thing he could have done. He should have been a character that was already in the game, not DLC. But these two characters have so many similarities, it's not even fun. They both have blonde spiky hair, they both come from a JRPG, both of their villains have white hair, and they both have a large shoulder pad. Even though Dart has two, but when he has one large shoulder pad that's larger than the other one. Dart is one of my favorite Sony characters, and Cloud is my favorite Square Enix character. So I really love to see these two characters fight and be rivals. Like, this has to happen. It's like Nathan Drake and Lara Croft, or Jak and Daxter, and you know, Cloud is that for Dart, and Dart is that for Cloud. So with all that being said, here are some honorable mentions / DLC. So that is it for my list, and I do apologize that it took me so long to get this video out. Like I said, my house is pretty packed and there's a lot of people, so it's always a lot of noise going on, so I have to kind of choose the right times. Most of them I have to stay up extra late or something like that to actually record a video. And also a fire kind of took place close to my house, and they said it knocked my internet down. That's what they claim. Now, with all that stuff aside, I'm sure some people are probably going to ask about the DLC, especially Sephiroth and Virgil. I did put them as DLC because you have to put popular characters as DLC. One of the problems that PlayStation All-Stars actually had was that they didn't get enough people to buy some of the DLC, like Isaac Clarke and Zeus, and some of the other ones. So, you know, you have to put popular characters for DLC. Of course, you can put some unpopular ones, but you know, you should put a very popular one, then put an unpopular one in between those, so it can always keep it a nice flow. Because they are the antagonists, they're not the protagonists, so they don't have to be in the game automatically. Like in every video, don't forget to comment down below and tell me who do you guys want to see in PlayStation All-Stars, or who do you think I missed out, or who I may missed or didn't mention that you would love to see. I always love to hear you guys' opinion. And don't forget to power up by hitting that like button, subscribe to join the guild, and if you are part of the guild, hit the bell of awakening to know when I'm uploading a new video. As always, my boys and girls, have a good one, and game over.